Okay, let's open the hearing on LB507, and Senator Hunt, welcome to that chair.
Thank you, Chairman Merman, and hello, members of the committee. I'm Megan Hunt, MEGAN-HUNT, and I'm here to introduce LB507. If you look at the text of the bill, LB507 just changes one sentence in our statute, and what it does is it clarifies that when a child is enrolled in a school district, and the school district has an obligation to provide transportation for that child's IEP, then that transportation is to be provided by the school district. Some school districts have recently taken the position that even if a child is enrolled in their district, if they have an IEP that calls for transportation, but the child doesn't live within the geographic boundary of that school district, that they don't have to provide the transportation. So this bill just clarifies that if a kid is in your school, but they live outside the boundary, you still have to provide transportation for them if they have an IEP. You might ask, how does a child end up outside the school boundary? Well, there's a couple of ways. I can name a few of them. One would be children in foster care. From time to time, they're moved from a home in one school district where they've been going to school for a long time to a home in another district. At the time of the move, the law requires DHHS to determine what school that child's going to go to after the move. And federal and state law here in Nebraska says that the child shall remain in the school of origin unless it's in the best interest of the child. So sometimes they're moved outside the boundary, but they stay going to that school because of a foster care placement. Another way a child might end up outside of the district is if they're awarded the court, and the court places the child in a residential facility. For example, if the child needs different services that facility would be providing, and then the parents continue to reside in the original school district. So that would be another example. And again, Nebraska law says that the child needs to continue to be a part of the district they were in at the time of the move. So LB507 is very simple. I think it clarifies the original intent of the law. It clarifies that when a child's IEP says they have to have transportation, that the school has to provide that. And there will be a testifier after me who can explain in further detail the necessity of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Senator Hunt at this time? Senator Hughes.
Thank you, Chairman Merman. Thank you, Senator Hunt. So I'm just going off of our last bill. So if a school has taken an option-in kid with an IEP, and that IEP requires, so let's just throw, I'm in Milford, I've taken a kid from Lincoln in that has an IEP that requires transportation. I need to send somebody from Milford to go pick that kid up in Lincoln and bring him back?
It sounds like the answer is no, and there will be people behind me who can speak to that.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Because I'm like, that's not going to help Milford take that kid. But okay.
Any other questions for Senator Hunt? If not, thank you.
Thank you.
And proponents for LB507? Welcome back.
Thank you, Chairman Merman. Chair Merman and members of the Education Committee, my name is Elizabeth Einen Kokerda, spelled ELIZABETHEYNON-KOKRDA, and I am General Counsel of Education Rights Council, which is a nonprofit trying to make sure all children access school and thrive. This particular piece of legislation is actually very important for a narrow but very vulnerable population of children. And as Senator Hunt says, it's addressed specifically for children who have an IEP where the IEP itself requires transportation. So not all IEPs require transportation, but sometimes you do, and usually that's for our most vulnerable children. And what we have right now is a situation where generally, our laws state that school districts must provide or contract for special education programs and transportation for all resident children. Again, this is about children that the school district is already responsible for. So if I am, just for want of a better word, because we do see this in larger districts, if I am an OPS district and I have a student who either their parents reside, so they're definitely a resident child according to our law's definition, or as Senator Hunt referred to, a foster child, and they have been placed, say, in 66, but they're still the resident of OPS, for example, then this bill would say you have to continue to fulfill the IEP requirements for transportation. So what's happening is there's a barrier, a geographic barrier. It's being interpreted as a geographic barrier that says, yes, I know you're my child. I know you're a resident student, and I know that I am going to provide you the service, but not the transportation in the IEP. And that's the problem we're trying to solve, is when those situations happen, that a student has been placed, for example, I have a very vulnerable, a challenging child that is so fragile that they need to be in residential care. So again, I'm from Omaha, I have to use Omaha examples, I'm sorry. Their parents live in Omaha, in OPS, for example, but their child is actually hospitalized and living in Ambassador. The Omaha Public Schools is still receiving.
Is Ambassador in OPS?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's in District 66. So it's right within Omaha, but it's a little outside of the boundaries of OPS. Thank you. So it's a challenge of saying, if you're going to serve the child, serve them fully. You have the opportunity, for example, if the child moves to a place that's far away, DHHS usually will sit down and say, it's not in the best interest to go 90 miles, that's silly. But if we're very close and the district has said, yeah, I can serve you, or I must serve you according to law, we want to make sure all parts of the IEP count, including the transportation aspects of the IEP. You had a question about option enrollment, and I know I'm almost out of time, but
Later. Any questions? Were you finished? Or?
yeah, that's
Okay, any questions? Good. Yes, Senator Conrad.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Elizabeth. From your practice or experience, I know you're based in Omaha, but you work across the state as well. I just want to lift up kind of what I'm hearing back from Nebraskans is that option enrollment, particularly for kids and families with different learning needs, isn't a one-way kind of a street or approach where everybody's running to larger districts where they may have more resources. Sometimes they're going to smaller districts because they have smaller class sizes. Sometimes it's because of where a parent's job is, might be different than where the family resides, and so logistically it just might be easier for the family to be closer together during the school and work day. There can just be a lot of different reasons why families utilize option enrollment. And I was just wondering, are those some of the major instances you hear about in your practice? Are there other reasons that the committee should know about? How these transportation components factor into families' decisions in that regard?
So option enrollment is actually a little bit separate and apart.
Okay.
I'm struggling to recall the statute. I think it's 79-262 or 67.
Okay, I was
somewhere
thinking
in
it was
there.
tied together. I'm
Right.
sorry
so
for that.
There is a part. So what it says is if you're an option student and you come into the district and you've been accepted, right now we actually are saying that if you option in and you have transportation as part of your IEP as part of option, the residence district is already providing it. So in other words, we already are crossing some lines
Okay.
for students with option enrollment. So it does not become the burden of the option district to suddenly start providing a whole lot of transportation. That is certainly not my understanding. That is not the intent of Senator Hunt, I don't believe, and I don't think that that's what the language actually says. It does say in option enrollment, please see 79-1129, all right, which has two parts. Part A says serve all these people. Part B says basically the words are within the district. You're supposed to provide transportation within the district, and the question becomes, where did those within the district come from? I actually went back and looked at the legislative history, and I went all the way back to 72. And in 1972, what everybody was worried about is getting more transportation. At that point in time, I have it in my testimony, what it had said is that the within the district words, it's on the last page, were related to residency of the children as opposed to a geographic limitation. What it said is that school districts were to provide transportation for children with special needs within the school district. Then there was a discussion about making sure it was more equitable to we had parents were getting reimbursed and say driving all the way to Omaha School for the deaf.
Okay.
And only getting a limited piece of reimbursement. So the whole change in 72 was not about changing geographic locations, but somehow those 3 words within the district got shifted. There's no legislative history on that particular shift. But the challenge that also doesn't make sense is if you say that, then is my obligation as a district to go all the way to the border, and then the person from Ambassador breaks the kid to the border, and that's where I pick them up and drive them to school, when it's my child that I'm supposed to be providing the IEP for? The purpose of this is really just for kids with IEPs that require IEP transportation, which is different than general ed rules about for transportation.
That's helpful. Thank you. That it's much more narrow than perhaps I was thinking. I appreciate that history too. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions for Elizabeth? If not, appreciate your testimony. If not, Senator Hunt, you're welcome to come up and close. And while she does, we had 10 proponents for LB 507, 2 opponents, and 0 neutral testifiers online.
Thank you, colleagues. I just want to clarify this affects a very small number of students, and we're only talking about IEP transportation. We're not talking about option enrollment at all. These kids need transportation because of their disability and because they were moved outside their home district, not because they optioned out. They are still legally a part of that district. So I think we're apples and oranges a little bit here. So just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. Any questions for Senator Hunt? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that will close the hearing on LB 507 and close the hearings for today.